What? You're going back home to give birth? I asked incredulously. My mother-in-law shot me a snide grin and remarked, "Why don't you just stay there forever? I don't want to see your freeloading face." Her words stung, but I managed a composed reply. "Sure, take care then. My name is Slow, a 34-year-old professional. I've been dating Barry for 2 years now. We first met at a party where a shared taste in music sparked an instant connection. After exchanging numbers, we started spending our evenings together, discussing everything from favorite tunes to work challenges over drinks at our local bar. Being with Barry was always a joy, and time with him flew by. Eventually, we became a couple, and life had never felt more fulfilling. Despite our busy work schedules, we cherish our weekends together. The anticipation of seeing Barry motivates me to work harder and be more productive during the week. Our relationship had been a cornerstone of my career success. After a year of dating, we decided to take the next step and moved in together. Both of us were serious about our future and the prospect of marriage. Being with him brought a sense of calm and joy, solidifying our mutual desire to marry. Living together before engagement turned out to be a wise choice. It allowed us to understand each other's lifestyles, strengths, and quirks. A year later, my desire to marry him remained steadfast, and I eagerly awaited his proposal. Though he had his own timing, I couldn't deny feeling a bit impatient lately. Then, unexpectedly, he invited me to dinner at an upscale restaurant. It wasn't a special occasion, yet I couldn't help but wonder if this was the moment. After work, I arrived at the restaurant, nervous yet tingling with excitement. Upon seeing him, I noticed he was even more nervous than I was. His palpable anxiety strangely eased my own. Despite feeling sorry for his nerves, his awkward, intense greeting actually made me chuckle inwardly. Then came the meal, and throughout he was visibly nervous. As we finished the main course, he called my name softly. "Cho." His direct gaze made me slightly apprehensive. "Cho, you're the most wonderful person I want to cherish. I hope you feel the same about me. So will you marry me?" With those heartfelt words, he presented a ring. My answer was already clear. "Yes, I can't wait for our life together." With our engagement sealed, I was overwhelmed with happiness. However, life soon became hectic, and the joy was fleeting. We had to meet each other's families, organize family gatherings, and begin wedding preparations. Balancing all this alongside our demanding work schedules was a challenge, but Barry and I found ways to carve out time and move forward with our plans. When I introduced Barry to my parents, they took a liking to him right away, impressed by his sincerity. Their approval meant a lot to me, and I was grateful they welcomed our decision to marry. However, when it came time to visit Barry's parents, things took an unexpected turn. "Barry's fiancé, you seem rather plain," remarked Barry's mother, R., bluntly upon our first meeting. Taken aback by her comment, I felt knocked down. Barry quickly interjected. "Mom, what are you saying? She's the woman I chose. That was pretty rude." "I'm just being honest, you know," R. responded defensively. Barry's father, Will, stepped in, trying to diffuse the tension. "Enough, R. That's uncalled for." Despite Barry and his father's attempts to defend me, I couldn't shake off the hurt from R's words. Later, Barry apologized. "Cho, I'm sorry about my mom. She's always been straightforward, sometimes too much. I've never been comfortable with it either." "Really?" I asked, surprised by his admission. "Yeah, so please don't let her words get to you. If she says anything after we're married, Let me know right away. I'll handle it, he assured me earnestly. His words brought me relief. From the moment we started dating, Barry had shown he would protect me, even attempting to shield me during our introduction to his parents. Still, my apprehensions persisted, especially regarding the impending family meeting. I couldn't shake the worry that R would disrespect my parents too. Despite my warnings to Barry, he had assured me he would handle her carefully. I had even briefed my parents about R's challenging nature, which they were already familiar with from past encounters. The day of the family meeting finally arrived, and my nerves were on edge for entirely different reasons. "Hello, I'm Barry's dad. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for having us," Will greeted warmly, extending a hand to my parents. "We're Cho's mom and dad," my parents replied politely, trying to keep the atmosphere pleasant. They exchanged pleasantries with Will, but R remained silent, seating herself and ordering a drink without a word. "I'll take her red wine. Looks like we'll need a bit of a drink to make this interesting," she commented casually, her words casting an uncomfortable shadow over the room. My parents were left speechless by R's behavior, visibly taken aback. Both Will and Barry, clearly annoyed, swiftly apologized to us for R's conduct, and so the family meeting commenced. My parents and Will hit it off right away, engaging in friendly conversation throughout the meal. R remained largely focused on her food, but as she became increasingly intoxicated, she started to interject into the conversation. "A government job? It may be stable, but the pay isn't anything to brag about. Barry's marrying into such boring people. If they have kids, they'll probably be just as dull," R remarked, crossing a line with her words. "That's enough," Will intervened, his voice filled with anger. "You need to leave now," R, defiant, muttered. "What's the big deal? I'm just being honest." Will escorted R outside and arranged for her to take a cab home. Returning to the restaurant, he and Barry apologized once more for R's behavior. I was relieved that we had reserved a private room. R had proven to be more of a challenge than expected. At the wedding, she seemed subdued, likely because Will had warned her to behave impeccably or face consequences. Apparently, he had even threatened divorce if she caused any embarrassment, so she kept her comments to herself. Thankfully, the wedding went off without a hitch, and I was grateful for that. Thus, our married life began in earnest. Barry and I had a wonderful relationship, making our life together blissful. We both shared household responsibilities equally to ensure neither of us felt burdened. It was a bonus that Barry excelled in cooking. I always looked forward to his meals. On days when he got caught up at work but still took on the chef's role, we would cook together. This collaboration made our days together as a happy couple all the more enjoyable. Barry made an effort to visit his family home alone as much as possible, mindful of both R and myself. Thanks to this, I was spared any direct snide remarks or confrontations from R. I deeply appreciated Barry's consideration during this time. However, tragedy struck when Will suddenly fell ill and passed away. Barry and I rushed to the hospital, but we arrived too late. "Damn!" Barry exclaimed in disbelief. Will's death hit him hard, and R was visibly distraught as well. "How could you leave me like this?" Despite my strained relationship with R, I couldn't help but empathize with her grief. In that moment, I mourned the loss of Will, who had always treated me with kindness. In the following days, we found ourselves consumed with funeral arrangements while navigating our own grief. Barry took charge of organizing everything, and I did what I could to support him during this difficult time. The funeral proceeded smoothly, and we felt we had given Will a fitting farewell. Life eventually settled back into its routine for Barry and me. While it took time to come to terms with Will's passing, we eventually found our footing. Barry appeared determined to move forward with renewed resolve. However, a new challenge emerged unexpectedly. "Barry, please help me." Our sudden appearance at our doorstep caught us off guard. "Mom, what's wrong?" Barry asked, clearly unsettled by the unusual atmosphere. R's demeanor softened as she spoke. "Since your father passed, I've been feeling terribly lonely every day. Nothing seems to taste right anymore. I just wanted to see the faces of my only family, my son and his wife." Her words seemed genuine, her vulnerability evident. "Could you let me stay with you for a little while?" she asked, her request tinged with desperation. Barry and I were taken aback by her request. "I feel like I'll be crushed by loneliness if things continue like this," she pleaded. We hesitated, but reasoned that a short stay wouldn't hurt. R seemed so fragile. We doubted she had the energy to be hostile towards me, so we agreed to let her stay. And surprisingly, R behaved maturely. She even took on some household chores. "I'm staying at your home. It's the least I can do. Thank you, Slow. You're a lifesaver," she expressed gratefully. Both Barry and I appreciated R's efforts, and life seemed manageable if things stayed this way. However, after about 3 months, R began reverting to her old habits bit by bit. "Slow, are you not planning to quit your job? Isn't it normal for wives to stop working?" "But you've been working all this time," she said. I started to respond, but R's tone grew harsher, indicating she was returning to her old self. I turned to Barry immediately. "Okay, we need to talk to Mom and get her to go back to her hometown right away," I said. When Barry confronted R about it, her response was startling. "I've already sold the family home," she admitted. Barry and I exchanged shocked glances. "Mom, why would you do that without even discussing it with us? That's our family home," Barry said. "I inherited it from your dad. Selling it was my decision," R defended herself. "But you should have at least informed us," Barry replied, visibly frustrated. "I forgot. Sorry. Now I have nowhere else to go, so please don't kick me out," R pleaded. Barry and I were left speechless. Just as we were grappling with this unexpected turn of events, another surprise came our way. I discovered I was pregnant. Barry and I were overjoyed. We had been hoping for a child, but had almost given up due to our age. So, this was wonderful news. However, the prospect of dealing with R while pregnant added a new layer of complexity to our situation. Recently, she started complaining again. "Why do I have to cook for you two? I'm only staying here because of Barry, not you. Traditionally, it's the wife who handles all the housework," R countered to Barry. "R would cook only for herself and me, and she'd do her laundry but avoid yours," Barry explained. Barry would reprimand her, and she'd feel remorseful only to repeat the behavior. I was at my wit's end. Feeling the need to escape, I decided to begin my maternity leave early and return to my parents' home. When I discussed this with Barry, he proposed a solution that we both agreed on, and we began to make arrangements. I promptly informed R of our decision and started preparing to leave. "You're going back home to give birth?" R asked. "Yes. I feel it's necessary for a safer childbirth, even though I understand it means leaving household duties behind." "Barry supports this decision," I replied. Upon hearing this, R smirked and sneered. "Why not just stay at your parents' house forever? I don't want to see your parasitic face around here anyway. I bet even Barry's had enough of you. You don't need to come back to this house anymore." I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief at R's harsh words. All right then, take care, I replied calmly. I returned to my parents' house, grateful to be with them again after so long. They had been incredibly supportive, allowing me to find peace and comfort during this time. A month later, Barry arrived at my parents' house with news. I finally got the green light from work. I found us a new place. That's fantastic, I replied. Barry's plan was for us to transition to remote work, which his company had approved. Thoughtfully, he rented an apartment near my parents' home, and we decided to move there. Barry then terminated the lease on the room R had been staying in and finalized our move to the new apartment. Apparently, R was quite unsettled by this, and she called me. Hey, Slow, where are you? I'm at our new place with Barry. New place? Where? R's voice sounded urgent and somewhat panicked. I'll let you know, but I have to be honest. The lease here is being canceled, and everything's being moved out. I can't stay here anymore, I explained calmly. Barry and I are starting fresh somewhere else. But Barry said he's cutting ties with me. He doesn't want to talk to you anymore, I added, trying to make her understand. So, you were just pretending to be nice to stay here, huh? This was your plan because you couldn't make any money from selling the house you got from Will, right? R accused sharply. How did you find out? You were telling the neighbors how frustrated you were that the house your husband left had no value. Then suddenly, it became up for sale. People just can't keep quiet about things like that. Give me Barry back. I'm that kid's parent, so I have the right to live with him. As I've said before, he doesn't want to see you, and I won't pressure him into something he's uncomfortable with, I replied calmly. Upon hearing this, R exploded with irrational anger. Who do you think you are, acting all high and mighty when you're just a broke, freeloading plain wife? That's not a nice thing to say, but it's true. Well, I don't think our paths will cross much in the future, so it doesn't really concern me, I replied calmly. But let me clarify something. Alongside my full-time job, I also have a side gig, and I actually earn more than Barry, I continued. Oh, really? What's this side gig? R asked skeptically. I initially studied web design, so I've been taking on projects in that field. With both my full-time salary and freelance work, I'm bringing in about $7,000 a month, I explained. What? That much? That's more than Will used to make. R was left speechless upon learning about my true financial situation. Clearly, she hadn't expected that her underestimated wife was earning that much. But none of this concerns you. R. Barry has cut ties with you, and I'll be distancing myself even further, I asserted firmly. Wait a minute. If you're making that kind of money, maybe you could lend me a hand, R suggested. I didn't hesitate. I ended the call and blocked her number. It was a relief to expose R's true intentions and leave her feeling regretful. Knowing I wouldn't have to deal with her again brought me a sense of peace. She had no knowledge of where my parents lived or where I worked. With Barry working remotely and our new address undisclosed to her, the likelihood of R tracking us down was minimal. I've heard that R has always struggled with overspending, and whatever inheritance Will left behind has dwindled to almost nothing. She attempted to sell the house, but received a low offer, leaving her in financial trouble. However, old habits die hard. A neighbor from our former neighborhood reached out to Barry and informed us that our spending habits and reliance on payday loans have plunged her into debt. She's been asking neighbors for loans without success, leading to a challenging financial situation. It seems like karma has caught up with her. Meanwhile, Barry and I no longer have to worry about R intruding into our lives. We're enjoying a peaceful existence, splitting our time between our own home and my parents' place as I prepare for the birth of our child. Once the baby arrives, Barry and I are looking forward to nurturing our family and cherishing our time together.
The shrill ring of my phone pierced the silence of my office, making me jump. I glanced at the caller ID and felt my stomach knot. Patricia! My mother-in-law's name on the screen was enough to send a wave of dread through me. I took a deep breath, steeling myself before answering. "Hello, Patricia," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Olivia, dear," her saccharine tone oozed through the speaker. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important." I bit back a sarcastic response. Of course, she was interrupting. She always did. "What can I do for you?" I asked instead. "Well, I was just wondering if you'd picked up Connor's dry cleaning yet. You know how he likes his shirts pressed just so for work." I closed my eyes, counting to 5 in my head. "Patricia, I'm at work. Connor can pick up his own dry cleaning." "Oh, Olivia," she tutted. "A good wife takes care of these things. You wouldn't want Connor to look unprofessional, would you?" Before I could respond, my office door opened. Ethan, my colleague, poked his head in. He mouthed, "Meeting in 5, and I nodded gratefully. "I have to go, Patricia. I have a meeting." "Of course, dear. We'll talk later about the dry cleaning." I hung up, feeling a headache brewing behind my eyes. Ethan lingered in the doorway, concern etched on his face. "Everything okay?" he asked. I forced a smile. "Just the usual mother-in-law drama." Ethan shook his head. "I don't know how you put up with it. You're a saint, Olivia." If only he knew. If only anyone knew the half of what I dealt with daily. I gathered my notes for the meeting, trying to push thoughts of Patricia out of my mind. As we walked to the conference room, Ethan leaned in. "Hey, a bunch of us are going for drinks after work. Want to join?" The offer was tempting, a chance to unwind, to be around people who actually appreciated me, but I knew what awaited me at home if I was late. "I can't," I said, regret coloring my voice. "Connor's expecting me." Ethan's disappointment was palpable, but he nodded understandingly. The meeting dragged on, but my mind was elsewhere. I thought about Connor, about how he'd react if he knew the truth about my job, about how much I really made. It was a secret I'd kept for years, partly out of habit, partly out of fear of Patricia's reaction. As I drove home that evening, my phone buzzed with a text from Connor. "Mom's coming over for dinner. Pick up some wine?" I gripped the steering wheel tighter, my knuckles turning white. Of course, Patricia was coming over. She always found a way to insert herself into our lives. I walked into our house, arms laden with groceries and the requested wine. The sound of Patricia's laughter drifted from the kitchen, along with the aroma of something burning. "Olivia, dear," Patricia called out. "We're in here. I'm just showing Connor how to properly cook a roast. The poor boy's been living off your attempts at cooking for far too long." I set the bags down, taking a moment to compose myself before entering the kitchen. Connor stood by the stove, looking lost, while Patricia fussed over a blackened piece of meat. "Hi, honey," Connor said, giving me a quick peck on the cheek. "Mom's teaching me how to cook." I forced a smile. "That's great. I brought wine." Patricia clucked her tongue. "Oh, Olivia, you know Connor prefers beer with his dinner. Wine is so pretentious." I felt something snap inside me. The stress of the day, the constant criticisms, it all came to a head. "Actually," I said, my voice tight, "I brought the wine for me. I think I'm going to need it." The kitchen fell silent. Connor looked bewildered, while Patricia's eyes narrowed. I knew I'd pay for that comment later, but for now, I savored the small victory. As I poured myself a generous glass of wine, I couldn't help but wonder how long I could keep living like this. Something had to give. And soon. I never imagined my life could get worse, but fate has a twisted sense of humor. It was a crisp Sunday morning when Connor dropped the bombshell. "Honey," he said, his voice hesitant, "Mom's lease is up, and she's having trouble finding a new place. I told her she could stay with us for a while." The mug I was holding slipped from my grasp, shattering on the kitchen floor. Coffee splattered everywhere, but I barely noticed. "You did what?" I whispered, my voice barely audible. Connor rushed to clean up the mess, avoiding my gaze. "It's just temporary, Olivia. She's family. We can't leave her without a place to stay." I stood there, frozen, as the reality of the situation sank in. Patricia, living with us. The thought made me physically ill. "When?" I managed to ask. "She's moving in today," Connor replied, still not meeting my eyes. Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Connor practically sprinted to answer it, leaving me alone in the kitchen, surrounded by broken ceramic and spilled coffee. Patricia's voice floated through the house, saccharine sweet. "Oh, Connor, darling! Thank you so much for this. You're such a good son." I took a deep breath, plastered on a fake smile, and went to greet my new housemate. The next few days were a blur of passive-aggressive comments and thinly veiled insults. Patricia had taken over our guest room, but her presence seemed to fill every corner of the house. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, Patricia sauntered into the kitchen. "Olivia, dear," she said, her tone dripping with false concern, "don't you think those pants are a bit tight? A woman your age should be more mindful of her figure." I gripped the knife I was using to chop vegetables tighter. "My pants are fine, Patricia," I said through gritted teeth. She tsked. "If you say so, dear. I just worry about Connor. Men can be so easily tempted when their wives let themselves go." Before I could retort, Connor walked in. "Something smells great," he said, oblivious to the tension. Patricia beamed at him. "I was just giving Olivia some fashion advice. You know how I worry about you two." Connor laughed. "Mom, you don't need to worry about us. Olivia and I are fine." I turned back to the stove, fighting back tears of frustration. We were not fine. We were far from fine. The next morning, I woke up to find Patricia rearranging our living room. She had moved all the furniture and was hanging new curtains. "Patricia," I said, trying to keep my voice level, "what are you doing?" She turned, a picture of innocence. "Oh, Olivia, I hope you don't mind. This room needed a woman's touch. It was so drab before." I closed my eyes, counting to 10. When I opened them, Patricia was still there, smiling that infuriating smile. "This is my house," I said quietly. "You can't just change things without asking." Patricia's smile faltered for a moment before returning full force. "Don't be silly, dear. This is Connor's house too, and he loves what I've done with the place." As if on cue, Connor walked in. "Wow, Mom, the room looks great." I felt something inside me snap. Without a word, I grabbed my keys and stormed out of the house. I found myself in the parking lot at work, not even remembering the drive. Ethan was just arriving, and his face lit up when he saw me. "Olivia, what are you doing here on a Saturday?" I burst into tears, the stress of the past few days finally overwhelming me. Ethan rushed over, concern etched on his face. Hey, he said softly, pulling me into a hug. "What's wrong?" Through my sobs, I managed to explain the situation. Ethan listened, his face growing darker with each word. "Olivia," he said when I finished, "you can't keep living like this. It's not healthy." I nodded, wiping my eyes. "I know, but what can I do? She's Connor's mother." Ethan looked at me, his eyes intense. "You have options, Olivia, more than you realize." As I stood there in the parking lot, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe Ethan was right. Maybe I did have options, and maybe it was time I started exploring them. The weeks that followed Patricia's move-in were a living nightmare. Every morning, I'd wake up hoping it had all been a bad dream, only to hear her shrill voice echoing through the house. Today was no different. "Olivia," Patricia called from downstairs, "Connor's shirts need ironing." I gritted my teeth, counting to 10 before responding. "I'm getting ready for work, Patricia. Connor can iron his own shirts." The sound of footsteps on the stairs made my heart race. Patricia appeared in the doorway, her face a mask of disapproval. "A good wife takes care of her husband," she said, her voice dripping with condescension. "But I suppose that's too much to ask of you." Before I could retort, Connor appeared behind his mother. "It's okay, Mom. I can do it myself." Patricia turned to him, all sweetness and light. "Oh, honey, you shouldn't have to. That's what wives are for." I felt something snap inside me. "That's it," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "I'm leaving for work. Don't wait up." I brushed past them both, ignoring Connor's confused calls. As I slammed the front door behind me, I felt a mixture of relief and guilt. Relief to be away from Patricia's constant criticism, guilt for leaving Connor to deal with her alone. At work, I threw myself into my projects, desperate for any distraction. Ethan noticed my frazzled state and cornered me in the break room. "Olivia," he said gently, "you can't keep going on like this. You look exhausted." I sighed, running a hand through my hair. I know, Ethan, but what can I do? She's always there, always criticizing, always undermining me. Ethan's eyes hardened. You need to stand up for yourself. Tell Connor how you feel. I laughed bitterly. I've tried. He just doesn't see it. To him, she's just being helpful. As I spoke, my phone buzzed with a text from Connor. Mom wants to know what's for dinner. She says your cooking could use some work. I showed Ethan the message, my hands shaking with anger. He read it, his face darkening. That's it, he said firmly. You're coming home with me tonight. You need a break from all this. Part of me wanted to protest, to be the dutiful wife and go home. But a larger part, the part that was tired of being belittled and ignored, nodded in agreement. I texted Connor back. Working late, order takeout. Ethan's apartment was small but cozy, a stark contrast to the tension-filled house I'd left behind. As we sat on his couch, nursing glasses of wine, I felt myself relax for the first time in weeks. Thank you, I said softly. I didn't realize how much I needed this. Ethan smiled, his eyes warm. Anytime, Olivia. You deserve so much better than what you're getting at home. As the night wore on, I found myself opening up to Ethan in a way I hadn't with anyone in years. I told him about my secret career success, about the constant pressure from Patricia, about Connor's indifference. Why do you stay? Ethan asked, his voice gentle but probing. I stared into my wine glass, searching for an answer. I don't know anymore. Just then, my phone exploded with notifications, missed calls and texts from Connor and Patricia. I scrolled through them, my heart sinking with each message. Where are you? Mom's worried sick. How could you be so selfish? A good wife doesn't stay out all night. The last message made me see red. Without thinking, I dialed Connor's number. Olivia, he answered, his voice a mixture of relief and anger. Where the hell are you? I'm safe, I said, my voice steady despite the anger coursing through me. And I'm not coming home tonight. What? But Mom, I cut him off. No, Connor, not this time. I can't do this anymore. Your mother, your indifference, all of it. I'm done. As I hung up, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Ethan looked at me, a mixture of concern and admiration in his eyes. What now? He asked softly. I took a deep breath, feeling for the first time in years like I was in control of my own life. Now, I said, I start fighting back. The morning after my night at Ethan's, I returned home to face the music. As I stepped through the front door, the silence was deafening. Then, like a storm breaking, Patricia's voice rang out. Well, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence, she sneered from the living room. Connor sat beside her, his face a mask of disappointment and confusion. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Patricia scoffed. About your shameful behavior? I should say so. No, I replied, looking directly at Connor. About us, about this situation. Connor shifted uncomfortably. Olivia, can't we just forget about last night? Mom was worried sick. I felt my resolve hardening. No, Connor, we can't just forget. This isn't working. Your mother living here, her constant criticism, your indifference, it's killing me. Patricia stood up, her eyes flashing. How dare you, after everything we've done for you? I laughed bitterly. Done for me? You've done nothing but tear me down since the day I married Connor. The argument escalated quickly, voices rising, accusations flying. In the heat of the moment, I revealed my secret. You have no idea what I've sacrificed for this family, I shouted. I'm the one who's been supporting us. My job, my success, it's all been for us. The room fell silent. Connor stared at me, shocked. Patricia's face contorted with a mixture of disbelief and anger. What are you talking about? Connor asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Before I could respond, a wave of dizziness hit me. The room started to spin, and I felt my knees buckle. The last thing I heard was Connor calling my name as everything went black. I woke up in a hospital bed, the steady beep of monitors filling the room. Ethan was by my side, concern etched on his face. What happened? I croaked, my throat dry. You collapsed at home, Ethan explained softly. Exhaustion and severe stress, the doctors said. You've been out for a day. I closed my eyes, the memories flooding back. Connor? Ethan's expression darkened. He was here earlier, left when I arrived. A nurse entered, checking my vitals. Mrs. Thompson, how are you feeling? Like I've been hit by a truck, I admitted. She nodded sympathetically. That's to be expected. Your body's been under extreme stress. You need rest and a major lifestyle change. As she left, Ethan took my hand. Olivia, this can't go on. You're killing yourself. I nodded, tears welling up. I know, but what can I do? It's my home, my marriage. Is it worth your life? Ethan asked gently. Before I could answer, the door opened. Connor walked in, looking haggard. His eyes narrowed when he saw Ethan. Could you give us a minute? He asked, his tone clipped. Ethan squeezed my hand before leaving, throwing a concerned glance over his shoulder. Connor sat in the chair Ethan had vacated. Why didn't you tell me? He asked, his voice a mixture of hurt and anger. About your job, about how you were feeling. I sighed, feeling drained. Would you have listened? Every time I tried to talk about your mother, you dismissed my concerns. Connor ran a hand through his hair. I didn't realize. That's the problem, Connor, I said softly. You never realized. You never saw how much I was struggling. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. What do we do now? He asked. I looked at him, really looked at him, and for the first time in years I saw clearly. I saw a man who, despite his good intentions, had consistently chosen his mother over his wife, a man who had stood by while I was belittled and broken down. I don't know, I replied honestly, but I know I can't go back to the way things were. I won't survive it. Connor nodded slowly, a look of resignation crossing his face. And your colleague, Ethan? He's been a friend when I needed one, I said firmly. Nothing more. As Connor left, promising to return later, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. For the first time in years, I was putting myself first. The road ahead was uncertain, but one thing was clear. Things had to change, and they had to change now. After a week in the hospital, I returned home with a mix of dread and determination. The house was eerily quiet as I stepped inside, my footsteps echoing in the hallway. Welcome back, Connor said, emerging from the kitchen. His voice was strained, the tension between us palpable. I nodded, unsure of what to say. The revelation of my financial success still hung in the air, unaddressed. Where's Patricia? I asked, dreading the answer. Connor sighed. In the guest room. She's not happy, I snorted. When is she ever? As if summoned by our conversation, Patricia appeared at the top of the stairs. Her eyes narrowed as she saw me. So the prodigal daughter-in-law returns, she sneered. I hope you're proud of yourself, worrying us all like that. I felt my blood begin to boil. Proud? Of being worked to the point of collapse? Of being constantly belittled and criticized in my own home? Patricia descended the stairs, her face a mask of indignation. How dare you? After everything we've done for you. Enough, Mom, Connor interjected, but his voice lacked conviction. I laughed bitterly. Everything you've done for me? You mean moving in uninvited? Criticizing my every move, making me feel worthless in my own home? Patricia's face reddened. I've only ever tried to help. It's not my fault you're so sensitive. But then again, what can we expect from someone with your background? The room fell silent. Connor's eyes widened in shock. What do you mean by that? I asked, my voice dangerously low. Patricia smirked, sensing she'd struck a nerve. Well, dear, it's no secret that you come from, shall we say, humble beginnings. No wonder you struggled to be a proper wife. You never had a good example, did you? I felt as if I'd been slapped. How dare you bring my parents into this? Mom, that's enough, Connor said, but Patricia was on a roll. It's the truth, isn't it? Your poor, deceased parents. What would they think of you now? Lying about your job, neglecting your wifely duties. Something inside me snapped. Years of pent-up frustration and anger came pouring out. My parents would be proud of me, I shouted. They taught me to work hard, to stand up for myself. They loved me unconditionally, something you clearly know nothing about. Patricia gasped, clutching her chest in mock offense. Well, I never. No, you never. I cut her off. You never cared about anyone but yourself. You've manipulated Connor his entire life, and now you're trying to do the same to me. But I won't let you. Not anymore. I turned to Connor, who stood frozen, his eyes darting between his mother and me. Connor, I said, my voice shaking with emotion, I can't do this anymore. I won't live like this. It's her or me. The silence that followed was deafening. Connor opened his mouth, then closed it again at a loss for words. Patricia recovered first. Don't be ridiculous, Olivia. Connor would never choose you over his own mother. Would you, darling? Connor's lack of response was all the answer I needed. In that moment, I saw our entire marriage laid bare. Years of compromise, of putting everyone else's needs before my own, of slowly losing myself. I see, I said quietly. The calm that washed over me was almost frightening. Then I've made my decision. I walked past them both, heading for the stairs. Connor finally found his voice. Olivia, wait, where are you going? I paused, looking back at them. Patricia stood triumphant, while Connor looked lost and confused. I'm packing my bags, I said. I'm leaving. As I climbed the stairs, I heard Patricia's smug voice. Good riddance, you'll be back, begging for forgiveness. But I knew I wouldn't. For the first time in years, I felt free. The road ahead was uncertain, but anything was better than staying in this toxic environment. As I threw clothes into a suitcase, I made a silent promise to myself. No more compromising my worth, no more letting others dictate my life. It was time to reclaim my independence, my self-respect, and my happiness. The Olivia who walked out of that house was not the same one who had entered it years ago. She was stronger, wiser, and ready to face whatever came next, alone if necessary. I stood in the lobby of the law firm, my heart pounding. This was it, the point of no return. I'd spent the last week in a hotel, ignoring Connor's calls and texts, steeling myself for this moment. As I rode the elevator to the 15th floor, I replayed the events that led me here, each floor bringing a new memory of hurt and disappointment. The receptionist ushered me into a plush office where a stern-faced woman sat behind an imposing desk. Mrs. Thompson, she greeted, gesturing for me to sit. I'm Margaret Winters. You're here to discuss divorce proceedings? I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. Yes, I can't continue in my marriage. As we discussed the details, I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. This was the end of a chapter in my life, but also the beginning of a new one. Halfway through our meeting, my phone buzzed incessantly. Connor's name flashed on the screen. I silenced it, but the interruption had shaken me. Is everything all right? Margaret asked, her eyes sharp. I took a deep breath. Yes, it's just my husband. He doesn't know I'm here. Margaret's expression softened slightly. Mrs. Thompson, are you sure about this? Divorce is a big step. I'm sure, I said, my voice stronger than I felt. I can't live like this anymore. As we wrapped up the meeting, my phone buzzed again. This time it was Ethan. Olivia, where are you? Connor's here at the office looking for you. He seems really upset. My blood ran cold. How did Connor know where I worked? I'd always kept my job a secret from him and Patricia. I have to go, I told Margaret abruptly, gathering my things. I rushed out of the office, my mind racing. As the elevator descended, I tried to calm my nerves. What was Connor doing at my workplace? How much did he know? The doors opened, and I stepped into the lobby, only to come face to face with Connor and Patricia. Olivia, Connor said, his voice a mixture of relief and anger. What's going on? Where have you been? I stood my ground despite the urge to run. I told you, Connor, I'm leaving. I can't do this anymore. Patricia stepped forward, her eyes flashing. Don't be ridiculous, Olivia. You're coming home with us right now. No, I'm not, I said firmly. I'm done letting you control my life. Connor looked bewildered. Control your life? Olivia, what are you talking about? I laughed bitterly. You really don't see it, do you? How your mother has manipulated every aspect of our marriage, how you've always chosen her over me. That's not true, Connor protested weakly. Isn't it? I challenged. Then why are you here with her instead of coming to find me on your own? Connor fell silent, and I saw a flicker of realization in his eyes. Patricia, sensing she was losing control, changed tactics. Olivia, dear, we're just worried about you. You've been acting so strangely lately. Is it stress from work? Maybe you should take some time off. My work is not the problem, I said, my voice rising. My work is the only thing that's kept me sane. Do you want to know the truth, Connor? I'm the one who's been supporting us. My job, my success, it's all been for us, and you never even noticed. The lobby fell silent. Connor's face paled, while Patricia looked like she'd been slapped. What do you mean? Connor stammered. I took a deep breath, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. I mean that while you've been letting your mother run our lives, I've been working my way up in my career. I'm a senior executive now, Connor. I make 3 times what you do. And I've kept it a secret because I knew Patricia would find a way to use it against me, to make me feel small and insignificant like she always does. Patricia's face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little... No, I cut her off. I'm done being grateful for your abuse. I'm done pretending everything is fine when it's not. I'm filing for divorce, Connor. It's over. As I turned to leave, Connor grabbed my arm. "Olivia, please. We can work this out." I had no idea. I pulled away, tears stinging my eyes. "That's the problem, Connor. You never had any idea, and now it's too late." I walked out of the lobby, leaving Connor and Patricia standing there, shocked and silent. As I stepped into the sunlight, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, I felt free. The days following my confrontation with Connor and Patricia were a blur of legal meetings and emotional upheaval. I threw myself into work, grateful for the distraction. Ethan had been a rock, offering support without pushing for more. One evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone rang. Patricia's name flashed on the screen. I hesitated, then answered. "Olivia." Her voice was uncharacteristically soft. "We need to talk, please." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet her at a nearby cafe. As I walked in, I saw her sitting alone, looking smaller and older than I remembered. "Thank you for coming," she said as I sat down. I nodded, wary. "What do you want, Patricia?" She took a deep breath. "I want you to reconsider the divorce. Connor is devastated. I made mistakes, but surely we can work this out." I laughed bitterly. "Work it out? After years of your manipulation and Connor's indifference? It's too late for that." Patricia's eyes flashed with a familiar anger, but she quickly composed herself. "Olivia, be reasonable. Think about what you're giving up. The stability, the family." "The abuse?" I cut in. "The constant criticism? The feeling of never being good enough?" "I was trying to help," Patricia protested. "I only wanted what was best for Connor, for both of you." I shook my head. "No, Patricia, you wanted control. You wanted to keep Connor dependent on you and me in my place." Patricia's facade cracked. "And what's so wrong with that?" "I raised Connor. I know what's best for him. You're just some girl who wormed her way into his life." "I'm his wife," I snapped, my voice rising. "Or at least, I was. I loved him, supported him, built a life with him, and you couldn't stand it." Patricia leaned forward, her voice low and urgent. "Listen to me, Olivia. You don't understand what you're doing. Connor, he's not as strong as you think. He needs me. He needs us." Suddenly I understood. "This isn't about Connor at all, is it? It's about you. You're afraid of losing the lifestyle." Patricia's desperation turned to anger. "You ungrateful little bitch. After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me? By abandoning my son?" The cafe fell silent, all eyes on us. I felt a lifetime of pent-up emotions bubbling to the surface. "Done for me?" I said, my voice dangerously low. "You've done nothing but tear me down since the day I married Connor. You've criticized my cooking, my housekeeping, my career. You've manipulated Connor against me at every turn. And now you have the audacity to act like I owe you something?" Patricia stood up, her face red with rage. "You'll regret this, Olivia. You think you can just walk away? I'll make sure you lose everything in this divorce. Everything." I laughed, a sound that surprised even me. "Go ahead and try, Patricia. I'm not afraid of you anymore." As I turned to leave, Patricia called out one last time. "He'll never let you go, you know. Connor will fight this divorce every step of the way." I paused at the door, looking back at the woman who had made my life hell for so long. "Then let him fight. I'm done being the victim in this story." Walking out of that cafe, I felt lighter than I had in years. The road ahead would be difficult, I knew that. But for the first time, I was ready to face it on my own terms. No more compromises, no more sacrifices. It was time to reclaim my life, whatever the cost. 6 months after my confrontation with Patricia, I stood in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes and the promise of a fresh start. The divorce had been finalized last week, and despite Connor's initial threats, it had gone smoother than I'd expected. My financial success had been my ace in the hole, leaving Patricia and Connor with no leverage. As I unpacked, my phone buzzed. It was Ethan. "Hey," I answered, a smile in my voice. "How's the unpacking going?" he asked. "Slowly but surely," I replied. "Want to come over and help?" There was a pause. "Actually, I'm already outside your building. I brought dinner." My heart skipped a beat. Ethan had been a constant support throughout the divorce, but we'd kept things strictly platonic. Until now. I buzzed him up, suddenly nervous. As I opened the door, I saw Ethan standing there, holding takeout bags and wearing a hesitant smile. "I hope this is okay," he said. I pulled him into a hug. "It's more than okay." As we ate, sitting on boxes because I hadn't unpacked my furniture yet, Ethan filled me in on the office gossip. Apparently, my divorce and subsequent promotion had caused quite a stir. "Oh, and you'll never guess who I saw today," Ethan said, his tone cautious. I raised an eyebrow. "Who?" "Connor and Patricia. They were at the bank, looking pretty stressed." I felt a twinge of something. Not regret exactly, but a complex mix of emotions. How did they look? Ethan hesitated. Not great. Connor looked like he hadn't slept in days, and Patricia, well, she's definitely not living the high life anymore. I nodded, processing this information. Part of me felt a grim satisfaction, but another part felt an unexpected pang of sadness. "Olivia," Ethan said softly, "are you okay?" I took a deep breath. You know what? I really am. For the first time in years, I feel free. Ethan reached out, taking my hand. "You deserve to be happy, Olivia. You've been through so much." As I looked into his eyes, I felt a warmth I hadn't experienced in a long time. But before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Connor. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" Olivia Connor's voice was strained. I need your help." I closed my eyes, steeling myself. "What is it, Connor?" "It's Mom. She's not doing well. The stress of everything, it's taken a toll on her health. We can't afford her medical bills, and I don't know what to do." I felt a surge of conflicting emotions. Anger at the audacity of him asking for help after everything, pity for Patricia's situation, and a strange sense of power, knowing I held their fate in my hands. "Connor," I said, my voice steady, "I'm sorry about Patricia's health, but I can't help you, not anymore." "But Olivia?" "No, Connor, you and Patricia made your choices. Now you have to live with them, just like I had to live with the consequences of your actions for years." There was a long silence. Then, "I understand. I'm sorry, Olivia, for everything." As I hung up, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. The last tie to my old life had been severed. Ethan was watching me, concern etched on his face. "Everything okay?" I smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile. "Yes, everything is finally okay." I stood up, pulling Ethan with me. "Come on, help me unpack these boxes. I think it's time to start filling this new life with some happy memories." As we worked side by side, laughing and sharing stories, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road had been long and painful, but I had emerged stronger, wiser, and truly free. Patricia and Connor's downfall wasn't a victory to celebrate, but a reminder of the importance of independence and self-respect. And as I looked at Ethan, I saw the possibility of a future filled with mutual respect and genuine love. This was my new chapter, my fresh start. And for the first time in years, I was excited about what the future held. The woman who had entered that toxic marriage years ago was gone. In her place stood a stronger, more confident Olivia, ready to face whatever life threw her way. As night fell and the last box was unpacked, I stood at my window, looking out at the city lights. I was no longer Connor's wife or Patricia's daughter-in-law. I was just Olivia. And that, I realized, was more than enough.
The sound of Marjorie's floral suitcases hitting my hardwood floors echoed through the house like gunshots. 1, 2, 3 massive pieces of luggage, each more garish than the last, now cluttered my previously immaculate entryway. "I'm Annabelle, and this is how my mother-in-law declared war. Michael dear, just put those boxes in the guest room, the one with the morning sun." Marjorie's voice dripped honey as she directed my husband, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her designer handbag. "Annabelle, you might want to clear some closet space. I brought my whole winter wardrobe." My fingers clenched around the door handle. "Winter wardrobe? How long exactly are you planning to stay, Marjorie?" Michael appeared behind his mother, arms full of boxes, avoiding my gaze like a guilty child. I knew that look. It was the same one he wore when he forgot to tell me about family dinners or when he gave his sister Laura access to our vacation home without asking me first. "Oh, didn't Michael tell you?" Marjorie's eyes widened with practiced innocence. "The renovation company found black mold in my basement. The whole house needs to be gutted. Could take months to fix properly." The door handle creaked under my grip. "No, Michael didn't mention anything about that." "Well, I'm sure he meant to." Marjorie glided past me, her expensive perfume leaving a suffocating trail. "I thought about staying with Laura, but you know how small her apartment is, and besides," she turned. fixing me with that razor-sharp smile. "You're so much better at managing a household." My husband shuffled past with another box, still avoiding eye contact. "Mom's contractor says it could be 3 months, maybe 4. 4 months?" The words came out strangled. "Maximum 6, Marjorie called from the kitchen, where she was already opening cabinets. "Oh dear, we'll need to reorganize these. The flow is all wrong." I followed Michael into the guest room, closing the door behind us. "When exactly were you planning to discuss this with me?" "Annie, what was I supposed to do? She's my mother. She needs help. She needs help, or she needs a servant." I kept my voice low, controlled. "Because from where I'm standing, this looks like another power play." "Don't start." He set down the boxes with a thud. "You always do this, turn everything into some kind of conspiracy." "Because it usually is. Remember Thanksgiving? When she reorganized our entire kitchen without asking. Or Christmas, when she invited 20 people to our house without telling me." The sound of cabinets opening and closing drifted through the door. "My kitchen. My space. My sanctuary." "She's family," Michael said, as if those 2 words explained everything, excused everything. "And what am I?" He sighed, that familiar, dismissive sigh that made me want to scream. "Can we not do this now? Mom's had a rough time since Dad died. She's lonely. She's manipulative," I corrected. "And you enable her." "For months," he said, heading for the door. "It's just 4 months. Please, for me." I watched him walk away, like he always did when things got uncomfortable. Through the open door, I could hear Marjorie humming as she rearranged my kitchen, claiming my territory 1 cabinet at a time. 4 months. 6, maximum, she'd said. But I knew better. This was just the beginning. Marjorie hadn't come here because of black mold, she'd come here to take control. To reshape my life into something that suited her better. To turn me into the dutiful daughter-in-law she'd always wanted. I walked to the window and watched Michael carrying in more boxes, efficient and obedient, just like she'd trained him to be. My fingers traced the cool glass, and I made myself a promise: this would be the last time Marjorie steamrolled over my life. The last time Michael chose his mother's comfort over my happiness. They wanted a dutiful daughter-in-law. Fine. I'd give them exactly what they wanted, right up until the moment I didn't. Let the games begin, Marjorie. Let the games begin. 3 weeks into Marjorie's invasion, I found myself hiding in my own pantry. Pressing my forehead against a shelf of canned tomatoes while my sister-in-law Laura's voice drifted in from the kitchen. "Mother, you're absolutely brilliant. I don't know why we didn't think of this years ago." I held my breath, careful not to disturb the tower of reorganized spice jars Marjorie had alphabetized yesterday, without asking, of course. "Well, darling, sometimes the simplest solutions are the best ones." Marjorie's chair scraped against my newly scratched hardwood floors. "Annabelle's always been so capable. It would be selfish of her not to help family, wouldn't it? And with Thomas traveling so much for work, I'll need someone to look after me when the baby comes." My hand froze on its way to the door handle. "Baby? What baby?" "Now Laura, don't get ahead of yourself. First, we need to make sure Annabelle understands her responsibilities to this family. Michael's far too soft with her, lets her work those ridiculous hours at that consulting firm. She's always so proud of her career," Laura said, voice dripping with disdain. "As if spreadsheets are more important than family." I pressed my ear closer to the door. "That's why this renovation delay is perfect," Marjorie continued. "By the time the contractor finishes the work, Annabelle will be used to taking care of everything. It's really for her own good, gives her purpose." The sound of ceramic clinked against wood, my grandmother's teacups, I realized. The ones Marjorie had declared too precious to stay hidden in the cabinet. And once she's settled into her proper role, Marjorie added, we can discuss your situation. After all, a pregnant woman needs support. My fingers curled into fists. So that was their game, use this fake renovation to transform me into their personal servant. Just in time for Laura's conveniently timed pregnancy announcement. Thomas doesn't know yet, Laura said quickly. About the baby. Or that I might be pregnant. I mean, I'm not sure yet. Details, darling. The important thing is getting everything in place. Now, about that spare bedroom, I think if we move Annabelle's home office. I'd heard enough. I slipped out of the pantry and up the back stairs, careful to skip the creaky third step. In our bedroom, I found Michael packing for another convenient business trip. When were you going to tell me about Laura's baby? I asked. He fumbled his tie. What baby? The one your sister and mother are downstairs planning my life around. I don't know what you're talking about. He turned back to his suitcase, but I caught the tension in his shoulders. Your mother's renovation is fake, isn't it? Annie. Don't Annie me. Answer the question. He sighed, that familiar sound of surrender that made my teeth ache. Mom's just going through a rough time. She needs structure, routine. And I need my life back. I moved between him and the suitcase. Your sister isn't even pregnant yet, and they're already planning to move my office to make room for her. You're being paranoid. He tried to step around me. Mom just wants to feel useful. And if Laura is pregnant? If? So you did know. His silence was answer enough. When does it stop, Michael? When do I get to matter as much as they do? You always make everything so dramatic. He zipped his suitcase with more force than necessary. It's just family helping family. No, I said quietly, it's your family steamrolling mine. And you're letting them do it. He picked up his suitcase, checked his watch. I have to catch my flight. We can talk about this when I get back. But we wouldn't. We never did. As I watched him hurry down the stairs, I heard Marjorie's voice rise to greet him, followed by Laura's theatrical goodbye. The perfect mother, the needy sister, and the son who couldn't see the puppet strings. I walked to my home office, my space, my sanctuary, and ran my fingers along my desk. They wanted to take this too, turn it into a nursery for a baby that might not even exist. Well, let them try. I opened my laptop and began to type, documenting every conversation, every manipulation, every little power play. They thought they were setting a trap, but they'd forgotten something crucial. The best revenge is served with careful planning and impeccable documentation. The engagement party invitation arrived like a perfectly timed bomb, cream-colored cardstock wrapped in a silk ribbon. I found it propped against my coffee mug, the one Marjorie had relocated to the proper cabinet. Isn't it wonderful? Laura materialized beside me, designer heels clicking against the floor. Thomas insisted on announcing it properly, though I wanted something more intimate. I studied the invitation, noting the familiar layout. Interesting. This looks exactly like the design I used for the Clayton merger celebration last month. Laura's smile flickered. Oh? I wouldn't know. I just gave the designer some general ideas. Really? I pulled out my phone, scrolled through my work portfolio. Because it's identical. Down to the custom font I commissioned. The kitchen door swung open, and Thomas strode in, bringing a burst of fresh air and authenticity. Morning, all. Laura, darling, did you tell them about the promotion? Laura's face went pale. Thomas, not now. The regional director position. He continued, oblivious to her distress. The one you said Annabelle helped you prepare for. I set down my coffee cup with deliberate care. What promotion? The one you've been mentoring her for, Thomas said, frowning. Laura said you've been helping her develop client presentations, sharing your strategies. Thomas, please. Laura's voice cracked. Understanding dawned in his eyes as he looked between us. Laura, you told me Annabelle was supporting your career advancement. That she was helping you compete for my company's director position. She was, Laura stammered. In a way. I mean, I learned so much just watching her. Watching me. The pieces clicked into place, the missing client files, the mysteriously similar presentations. The contracts that mimicked mine down to the comma placement. You've been stealing my work. Not stealing. Laura's voice rose an octave. Adapting. Learning. You're always so selfish with your success. What's all this commotion? Marjorie swept in, already dressed for her weekly charity lunch. Laura, darling, you're shaking. Annabelle's trying to ruin everything, Laura sobbed. Just because I used a few of her ideas. A few? I laughed, the sound sharp enough to cut. You copied my entire portfolio. You're using my work to interview at Thomas's company. Now, Annabelle, Marjorie stepped between us, surely you're overreacting. Laura's simply trying to better herself. By committing corporate espionage. Thomas's voice had gone cold. Do you understand what this could do to my reputation? To the company? Michael knows. Laura blurted out. He said it was fine, that family helps family. The kitchen went silent. Even Marjorie seemed stunned by this revelation. When? I asked quietly. When did my husband give you permission to steal my work? Last month, Laura whispered. When he helped me copy your presentation files. Thomas set down his briefcase. I need to make some calls. Laura, we'll discuss this later. The kitchen door swung shut behind him with quiet finality. Now look what you've done, Marjorie hissed. Laura was finally getting her life together, and you had to ruin it with your petty jealousy. I turned to her, really looked at her, seeing the desperation behind her perfect facade. You knew too, didn't you? That's why you moved in, to help Laura access my files while I was at work. We did what was necessary, Marjorie lifted her chin. Laura deserves the same opportunities you've had. Opportunities. My voice shook. I worked 15 years for my position. 15 years of late nights and sacrificed weekends. And you helped her steal it because, what? She deserves it more. Family first, Marjorie said firmly. Something you've never understood. I looked at them, my sister-in-law still sniffling, my mother-in-law radiating righteous indignation, and felt something inside me snap clean through. You're right, I said, reaching for my phone. I never understood your version of family. But I understand corporate law just fine. I dialed my company's legal department. And now everyone else will understand it too. Laura's sob caught in her throat. Marjorie's face went slack with shock. But for the first time in weeks, my hands were steady, my purpose clear. Let them call it betrayal. I called it justice. Michael came home 3 days after the corporate espionage revelation. I heard his key in the lock at midnight, followed by the familiar shuffle of his briefcase hitting the floor. The house was dark except for my laptop's glow in the kitchen. You're still up, he said, hovering in the doorway. Funny how insomnia hits when you discover your husband helped steal your life's work. I didn't look up from the screen, where Laura's copied presentations sat side by side with my originals. The company lawyers called me today. I know. They called me first. He moved closer, his shadow falling across my keyboard. Annie, you have to drop the complaint. Laura's career. Laura's career. Now I did look up. What about mine? The one you helped her steal. She's my sister. She needed help. And I'm your wife. The words tasted bitter. Or did you forget that part when you were copying my files? It wasn't like that. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it hurt. Laura was struggling. Mom was worried about her. I thought if she had a chance to prove herself. By passing my work off as her own. You're already successful. Laura needs this opportunity more than you do. The casual dismissal of 15 years of my work hit harder than any scream could have. I closed my laptop, stood up slowly. Marjorie's planning a family dinner tomorrow, he continued, misreading my silence. Everyone will be there. If we could just talk this through. Everyone? I asked quietly. Including Thomas. Michael shifted uncomfortably. He's taking some time to think things through. Smart man. I walked to the coffee maker, my third pot tonight. Unlike your sister, who's still pretending she did nothing wrong. She made a mistake. No, Michael. A mistake is copying one presentation. This was months of systematic theft. With your help. The coffee maker gurgled, filling the silence between us. I could feel him watching me, waiting for the familiar pattern, my anger followed by forgiveness. My boundaries crumbling under the weight of family obligation. Mom says. I don't care what Marjorie says. My hands shook as I poured the coffee. I don't care about her dinner, or Laura's tears, or your excuses. I care about the fact that my husband betrayed me, and he still can't see why that matters. You're being dramatic. The coffee mug shattered against the wall, missing his head by inches. We both stared at the dark liquid dripping down the wallpaper Marjorie had insisted on installing last week. Jesus, Annie. Get out. What? Get out of my kitchen. Get out of my house. My voice was steady now, eerily calm. Go stay with your mother, since her opinions matter more than your marriage. You don't mean that. He stepped toward me, hands raised like he was approaching a wild animal. You're upset, I understand, but... Do you know what the company lawyers told me today? I interrupted. That because you helped Laura access my files, I could be held liable for corporate espionage. I could lose everything, my job, my reputation, my entire career, because you decided your sister deserved my life more than I did. The color drained from his face. They can't. They can. And they might. I walked to the door, held it open. So get out, Michael. Go to your family dinner. Tell them all how unreasonable I'm being. But don't come back tonight. Or tomorrow. Or until you figure out why what you did was wrong. Annie, please. And tell your mother her renovation contractor called. Apparently, there was never any black mold. Funny how these things come out, isn't it? He stood there, mouth opening and closing, the perfect picture of a man caught between lies. Finally, he walked past me, pausing at the threshold. We're family, he said softly. That has to count for something. I watched him walk away, feeling the last threads of our marriage unraveling with each step. It counted for everything, I whispered to the empty doorway. Until you proved it meant nothing at all. The cafe was neutral territory, which is why Thomas suggested meeting here. I watched him stir his untouched coffee, his engagement ring catching the afternoon light. Laura's been placed on administrative leave, he said finally. The company's investigating all her previous work. And mine. I pulled out a folder, slid it across the table. Everything she copied, everything Michael helped her access. 3 years of my work, rebranded as hers. Thomas flipped through the pages, his jaw tightening. She told me she was collaborating with you. That you were mentoring her. Funny kind of mentoring where the student steals the teacher's entire portfolio. He closed the folder, pushed it back. I ended the engagement last night. That stopped me. Thomas. Don't apologize. Please. He ran a hand over his face. I should have seen it sooner. The inconsistencies in her stories, the way Marjorie orchestrated everything. Speaking of Marjorie. I pulled out my phone, played the recording I'd made last night. Marjorie's voice filled our quiet corner, discussing her plans to contest her late husband's will, using documents Michael had helped her backdate. Thomas's coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. That's fraud. That's family. The bitterness surprised even me. At least, their version of it. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a text from Michael. Mom's crying. Laura's devastated. Please come home. We can fix this. I showed Thomas the message. He shook his head. They're not sorry for what they did. They're sorry they got caught. I know. I switched off my phone. That's why I met with a divorce lawyer this morning. Annabelle. I also spoke to the executor of my father-in-law's estate. I pulled out another folder. Turns out Marjorie's been living quite comfortably on money that should have gone to Michael's younger cousins. Money she convinced Michael to help her hide. Thomas whistled low. You've been busy. I learned from the best. I smiled without humor. Marjorie taught me everything about gathering intelligence on family members. She just never thought I'd use it against her. What's your endgame here? I traced the rim of my coffee cup, considering. They wanted to take my life, my career, my home, my independence. I'm just returning the favor. That's not an answer. No, I agreed. But it's all I have right now. My phone buzzed again, Laura this time, probably calling to beg or threaten. I let it ring. They're having another family dinner tonight, Thomas said quietly. Laura called me 7 times about it. Marjorie's insisting everyone attend, to work things out. Of course she is. I stood, gathering my files. Nothing says family healing like forced confrontation over pot roast. Are you going? I paused, remembering countless dinners where I'd swallowed my pride along with Marjorie's overcooked meat. Where Michael had watched silently as his mother and sister chipped away at my dignity. Yes, I said finally. But not for the reasons they think. Thomas stood too, reaching for his wallet. Want backup? You do that? After everything? I spent 2 years watching them manipulate everyone around them. Maybe it's time someone manipulated back. I studied him, this man who should have been my brother-in-law, who chose truth over family loyalty. Dinners at 7. Bring your appetite for justice. He laughed, but it wasn't entirely humorous. And what should I tell Laura when she calls again? I gathered my coat, thinking of all the evidence in my briefcase, all the carefully documented betrayals. Tell her to enjoy her mother's cooking. It might be the last family dinner for a while. As we left the cafe, I felt lighter somehow. Not because of the revenge I was planning, but because for the first time in years, I wasn't facing this family alone. Sometimes, I realized, the family you choose is stronger than the family you marry into. And sometimes, justice tastes better than pot roast. Marjorie's dining room looked like a war room disguised as a family gathering. My evidence folders sat beside my plate like unexploded grenades, while Thomas's presence at my right felt like borrowed armor. Shall we pray before dinner? Marjorie's voice dripped false piety. For family healing. Why stop the deception now? I opened the first folder. We're all so good at pretending. Michael's hand froze on his water glass. Annie, please. No. I laid out the first document, Marjorie's fake renovation contract. Let's talk about healing. Let's start with the lies that brought us here. Laura's mascara was already smudging. This isn't the time. It's exactly the time. Thomas's voice cut through the tension. Unless you'd prefer to discuss your creative interpretation of corporate authorship. You don't understand, Marjorie interjected, reaching for her wine. Everything I've done, everything we've done, was for this family's benefit. Benefit? I pulled out the estate documents. Like stealing from Michael's cousins. Or helping Laura steal my work. Which benefit are we discussing? The color drained from Michael's face. What cousins? The ones your mother convinced you to disinherit. I slid the papers toward him. Remember signing these? Backdating them? Mother? Michael turned to Marjorie, who was suddenly very interested in her napkin. It was complicated, she murmured. Your father wouldn't have wanted. Don't. Laura's voice cracked. Don't bring Dad into this. Why not? I stood, my chair scraping back. He's the reason for all of this, isn't he? The perfect family man who left you feeling inadequate, Marjorie. The father whose approval you never quite earned, Laura. The standard Michael can't live up to. Shut up. Laura slammed her hands on the table. You don't know anything about us. I know everything. My voice was steady, even as my hands shook. Every manipulation, every lie, every little power play. I documented it all. For what? Michael asked quietly. Revenge? Justice. I pulled out my phone, showed them the email from my lawyer. The estate executor is reopening the will. The company's launching a full investigation. It's all coming down. Marjorie's wine glass shattered on the floor. You ungrateful. Mother, don't. Michael's voice held a new edge. Is it true? Did you make me help you steal from my cousins? I protected you. Marjorie's facade cracked. Everything I've done was to protect this family. By destroying mine. I laughed, the sound harsh even to my ears. By moving into my home. Stealing my work. Turning my husband against me. You never belonged here. Marjorie's words cut like glass. You were never good enough for my son. No, Mother. Michael stood slowly. I was never good enough for her. The silence that followed felt like a tomb sealing shut. The police are coming, I said quietly. The fraud division. I called them before dinner. Laura's sob broke the silence. You can't. I already did. I gathered my folders. They'll want to talk to everyone. About the estate fraud, the corporate espionage, all of it. We're family, Marjorie whispered, but the word held no power anymore. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Annie. Michael reached for me. We can fix this. Together. I stepped back, bumping into Thomas, who steadied me with a gentle hand. That's the problem, Michael. You still think this can be fixed. I moved toward the door as red and blue lights began flashing through the windows. Some things aren't meant to be fixed. They're meant to be finished. You'll regret this, Marjorie called after me. When you're alone. I've been alone for years. I turned back one last time, watching their perfect family facade crumble as police cars pulled into the driveway. The only difference is now I'm choosing it. Thomas followed me out, past the arriving officers, into the cool night air. Behind us, I could hear Marjorie's protests, Laura's sobs, Michael's quiet answers to loud questions. Are you okay? Thomas asked softly. I watched my marriage, my family, my past dissolve in red and blue lights. No, I answered honestly. But I will be. sometimes healing starts with an ending. And sometimes revenge tastes exactly like freedom. The courthouse hallway felt like a funeral parlor, all hushed voices and careful steps. I sat on a wooden bench, watching Marjorie's lawyer whisper urgently to her across the hall. Laura huddled nearby, mascara already smudged, while Michael paced between us like a ghost haunting his own life. Thomas arrived first, carrying a briefcase I recognized, the one Laura had always claimed contained her original work. "Last chance," he announced, his voice echoing off marble walls. "Come clean now, or I show everything." Laura's head snapped up. "You wouldn't. Try me." He set the briefcase on the bench beside me. "Every draft, every email, every conversation where you admitted stealing Annabelle's work." "It wasn't stealing," Marjorie interjected. "It was family helping family." "Is that what you told the cousins you defrauded?" I asked quietly. "That you were helping." Michael stopped pacing. "Mother, what did you do?" "What I had to." Marjorie's perfect makeup couldn't hide her desperation now. "Your father always loved them more, gave them everything. So you took it back." Michael's voice cracked. "Made me help you take it." "You signed those papers willingly," she snapped. "Don't pretend you're innocent." "None of us are innocent." Laura stood, smoothing her designer skirt, bought with stolen success. "But some of us are better at hiding it. Right, Annabelle?" I met her gaze steadily. "I never hid anything. You just never bothered to see me. Because you were too busy being perfect." Laura's voice rose. "Perfect wife, perfect career, perfect life." "Perfect victim," Thomas interrupted. "Until now." The courtroom doors opened. Our lawyers emerged, faces grim. "The judge is ready," my attorney said. "All parties." "Wait." Michael stepped forward. "Annie, please. We can still fix this." "Can we?" I stood, gathering my files. "Can you give me back the years I spent trying to earn your mother's approval? The career your sister tried to steal? The marriage you let die? I love you." "No." The word echoed like a gunshot. "You love the idea of me. The perfect wife who never complained, never fought back, never demanded more than scraps of your attention." "That's not true." "Then prove it." I handed him a folder. "Testify. Tell the truth about what your mother made you do. What you helped Laura do." Marjorie's heel click stopped abruptly. "Michael, don't you dare." "Or what, Mother?" He turned to her, and for the first time, I saw steel in his spine. "You'll disown me. Like you did to the cousins." "I protected you." "You controlled him," I corrected. "Like you tried to control me." "But here's the thing about control, Marjorie, it only works if we let it." The courtroom doors loomed before us, dark wood and brass handles gleaming under fluorescent lights. "Last chance," Thomas repeated, softer now. "Tell the truth, or I will." Laura's sob echoed off marble. "Thomas, please. The truth, Laura. For once." She crumpled like paper in rain. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry." Sorry isn't enough. I reached for the courtroom door. "Not anymore. Annie." Michael's voice stopped me. "What do you want?" "Really?" I turned back one last time, seeing them clearly, the controlling mother, the desperate sister, the husband who never quite learned to stand alone. "I want justice," I said simply. "And then I want to forget you all exist." The courtroom door opened with a groan of hinges. Inside, a judge waited to hear our stories, of fraud and theft, of manipulation and betrayal, of a family built on lies finally facing truth. "Shall we?" Thomas held the door, his presence steady beside me. I stepped forward, leaving behind the whispers and pleas, the false promises and hollow apologies. Sometimes revenge isn't about destroying others, it's about saving yourself. And sometimes, justice is the sweetest revenge of all. Behind me, I heard Michael's footsteps following, then Laura's, then Marjorie's. Each step like nails in the coffin of their perfect family facade. The truth was about to have its day in court. And I was finally ready to tell it. The divorce papers arrived on the same morning as the newspaper headline. Local business dynasty faces fraud charges. I signed my freedom into existence while drinking coffee from my grandmother's china, the only thing I'd taken from my old house besides my clothes and dignity. My phone buzzed with a text from Thomas, Marjorie's being charged. Laura took a plea deal. You okay? The irony wasn't lost on me. The man who should have been my enemy had become my strongest ally. Better than okay, I replied, then set my phone aside to enjoy the silence of my new apartment. No manipulative mother-in-law rearranging my cabinets. No sister-in-law stealing my work. No husband avoiding conflict by avoiding me entirely. The doorbell rang. Michael stood there, looking smaller somehow, clutching a manila envelope. The cousin's lawyers contacted me, he said without preamble. I'm testifying against Mother. I studied him, this man I'd loved, this stranger I'd married. Why now? Because you were right. He shifted, uncomfortable with truth-telling after so many years of evasion. About everything. Mother's control, Laura's theft, my cowardice. Took you long enough. Annie. Don't. I held up a hand. We're not doing that scene. The one where you apologize, promise to change, beg for another chance. I wasn't going to. He pulled papers from his envelope. These are the records Mother kept. Of everything. I thought. Maybe they'd help your case. I accepted the envelope but didn't open it. Why are you really here, Michael? To say thank you. His voice cracked. For showing me what courage looks like. The words hung between us like smoke from a finally extinguished fire. I heard Laura's firm fired her, he continued. And Thomas. He's been kind, helping with the legal stuff. He's good at seeing through lies, I said. Better than I was. No. Michael shook his head. You saw everything. You just loved us enough to hope we'd change. Love isn't enough without respect. I know that now. He turned to leave, then paused. Mother's selling the house. Moving in with Laura. They'll have to take care of each other now. I thought of Marjorie and Laura, forced to face life without their usual weapons of manipulation and theft. Karma's funny that way. Yeah. He smiled sadly. Goodbye, Annie. I watched him walk away, noticing how straight his spine was now that he'd finally chosen truth over family loyalty. My phone buzzed again, a news alert. Marjorie's investment accounts had been frozen. Laura's plea deal included full restitution. The cousins were getting their inheritance back. Justice, served cold but complete. I carried my coffee to the balcony of my new apartment, watching the city wake up. Below, a mother and daughter argued on a bench, their voices carrying up like a reminder of what I'd escaped. The daughter stormed off. The mother watched her go. Neither chased the other. Sometimes love means letting go. Sometimes revenge means stepping back and letting consequences unfold naturally. My laptop chimed with an email, a job offer from a competing firm, one that had followed my case closely. They valued integrity, they said. And courage. I thought about Marjorie, who tried to make me small enough to control. About Laura, who tried to steal what she couldn't earn. About Michael, who'd finally learned to stand alone too late for us. The morning sun felt warm on my face as I typed my acceptance. Not because I needed to prove anything anymore, but because I wanted to. Because I could. My phone buzzed one last time, Thomas asking if I wanted to get coffee, strictly as friends. I smiled, thinking how strange life was. How the family you choose sometimes appears in the ruins of the family you lost. I texted back a simple, yes. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about rebuilding yourself, piece by piece, until you're too strong to break again. And sometimes, just sometimes, karma does your revenge for you.
What are you even doing in this house? You're practically a parasite. Hey, what are you doing with that? My mother-in-law Scarlett threw my belongings out of the window. I retorted to her seemingly insane action. "Ha, don't you talk back to me like that." "Please pick them up." Then she held a knife to my throat. Realizing the danger, I couldn't move a step. "Get out quickly, or it won't be a joke next time." "Understood. If you insist that much, I'll leave. Scarlett, who has been harassing me since we started living together, doesn't know. She doesn't know that I'm the one supporting this house. The fear I had earlier is gone. I even feel like daring her to do her worst. I'll give you a week. Leave within that time." "Thank you," I said to her, but I couldn't stop laughing. Realizing I shouldn't be noticed, I quickly returned to a serious face. "This will bring peace to the house." "Very good. Yes, indeed." How foolish can she be? Without me, this house will be far from peaceful. A hell awaits. Thus I left Scarlett behind in the in-laws' house and moved to a condominium. She would later come to know the truth, but by then it was too late. My name is Alexis now. I'm working from home, utilizing my previous job experience. It's been over 5 years since I married Ethan. But are you okay? I'm sorry, I never thought this would happen. I'm just glad you're safe. Alexis, don't think like that. I was in the hospital room, relieved that he was safe, crying without caring about anyone else. The thing is, working in construction, he had an accident and lost almost all grip strength in his dominant hand. When I heard that, I couldn't think of anything. "Ah, Scarlett dear." "Ethan, are you okay?" Scarlett had arrived, but she pushed me aside and rushed to Ethan. It seems she didn't even see me. We weren't necessarily on bad terms, but sometimes she prioritized Ethan over everything. It was one of those times. "Oh, Alexis, you're here." "I just got here too." "Well, whatever. Ethan, let's live together at my place from now." "Huh?" I let out a strange noise at her abrupt suggestion. Then she glared at me. "What? Do you have a problem?" "No, it's just all of a sudden. Ethan is in this state. I can't leave him to you alone." I was irked by her comment. There was no need for her to go that far. Then Ethan said, "Alexis has been doing enough until now, so I'm relying on her from now on, too." Thank you. Hearing his words, I thought I saw Scarlett make a face. I couldn't see it clearly, but she obviously didn't like it. But I couldn't let her win. "So, come to the house as soon as you're discharged." "You too, of course." It's not like she needed to say that. Leaving everything to her, who knows what would happen? "And you'll do all the moving preparations, Alexis." "All of it. That's a bit much." "That's right, Mom, you should help out too." I wished he had said more. However, Scarlett, probably not wanting to help, ignored his words. "I have my own things to do," she grinned wickedly, making sure he couldn't see. "It's probably not for anything good." So living with Scarlett was decided. A month later, Ethan was discharged. I was busy with the move, so I asked Scarlett to pick him up. but it was her who told me just to get things ready. Irritated but still tittying up. It's not done yet. Ha, I told you today's the day Ethan gets discharged. Not even here to welcome him. That's because you said, Ethan, I told you right. This woman prioritizes herself over you. That's not true. I know her intention. She's trying to embarrass me in front of Ethan to lower my standing. But I'm determined not to fall for such an obvious plan. Ethan looked at me with a knowing kind expression. Mom, stop that nonsense. Unseemly. I'm saying this for your sake. That's none of your business. Wait a minute. Scarlett, chasing after Ethan in a panic, was quite comical. It made me laugh out loud. Noticing that, she glared at me with a devilish face. Her glare meant nothing to me. You can just relax at home from now on. I can't do that. I can't use my right hand, but I can't just put all the burden on you. Even so, you just got discharged. I won't feel at ease if I don't do something. Ethan was determined. I had planned to let him relax for a while, but seeing his insistence, I decided to respect his wishes. Maybe start with simple cleaning. It might even be good for rehabilitation. That makes sense. I don't know if this hand will ever be the same, but it's better than doing nothing. But there's one condition. Absolutely no overdoing it. Of course, if I did, you would get mad, right? You're scary when angry. No kidding. He looked normal, just as I had imagined. Well, he might just be acting brave, not wanting to worry me. That's why I decided to work even harder, doing his share too. But I had forgotten about one person who would interfere. Hey, Alexis. Yes. Why, is Ethan cleaning? Did you force him to do it? Scarlett only sees and judges based on what's in front of her. She has no idea of the thoughts and feelings behind it. She should try being in our shoes for once. Anyway, you've just locked yourself in a room and played all day. It must be nice to only have fun, especially when your husband is— Wait, what do you mean? Looking around, I saw expressions that seemed to indicate I didn't really understand. I couldn't understand the meaning surrounded by strangers. I was being condemned. I wanted to escape immediately. Don't you get it? We don't need you. Less people in this house. I don't understand what you mean. Everyone says. The baffling interrogation continued. They kept insisting on how worthless I was. Continuously hearing this could drive anyone insane. Isn't it time you understood your place? Shouldn't that be your line? You're going to rebel against your mother-in-law. Isn't this a waste of time? How dare you? I was reaching my limit. I didn't want to anger Scarlett further, fearing what she might do next. So I decided to take action. Oh, isn't it about time Ethan comes back from rehab? What is it? That time already. Then the mysterious woman left. I'll come again. Sure, I'll be waiting. Let's talk more. Scarlett and her friend fell for my lie. In reality, he wouldn't be back for another hour. We were just getting into a good part. By the way, who was that person earlier? I finally asked the question I'd been curious about. Oh, that was Johanna, my best friend. I told her about you, and she wanted to meet you. I could easily imagine how she had described me, probably as a useless wife who does nothing but play. I thought how pitiable Scarlett was, only able to do such things. That's how it was. By the way, Ethan isn't coming back yet. As I was returning to my room— Wait, what do you mean? Just as I said, he's not coming back yet. You lied. You should have realized. What's with that attitude? I decided to say what I wanted. Any further interference from her would be just a nuisance. Weren't you the one who started this conflict? You brought your friend because you couldn't handle it alone. That's it. It's not true. I can handle someone like you on my own. Then please do, if you really can, I boldly taunted her. I thought she would do something by that, and she reacted. Apologize now while you can. I had no intention of doing that. Unable to contain her anger, she grabbed a vase nearby and threw it at me, just like the trash can earlier. I easily dodged it, having anticipated her move. I taunted her further with a laugh. I'm home. Just then, Ethan arrived. Scarlett panicked. Why now? You weren't supposed to be back yet. Oh, sorry, what I said earlier was a lie. He was actually on his way back. Why would you do that? It's obvious, isn't it? Pointing at the shattered vase, I imagined the upcoming scene would be quite amusing. Wow, what happened here? Scarlett threw it at me. What's going on? Her friend visited us earlier, and then I explained everything to Ethan. He looked both amazed and angry. Is that true, Mom? No, I didn't mean. So it is true. Why did you do that? I didn't intend for it to go like this. Watching Scarlett about to cry from her son's anger, I felt like all my troubles had vanished. Well, I have things to do. Okay, wait a minute. Ignoring her, I went back to my room. I believed this would stop her from being mean to me in the future. I never doubted that. Since then, peaceful times followed. However, on that day, having stayed up all night, I ended up napping in the afternoon. Then, sorry to wake you, but could you come here for a sec? Understood. Ethan seemed unusually serious as I headed to the living room. I saw Scarlett there. What happened? Look at this. On the table, there was a broken model kit. It was one of Ethan's hobbies, something he treasured greatly. When I came back, I found it like this. Do you know anything? I don't know. I truly didn't recognize it. This model kit was usually in the former his father's room, but I hadn't been there today. But someone must have done this. I looked at Scarlett. She was the likely suspect. Then she laughed with an expression I had never seen before. It was as if she was possessed by a demon. Then I completely understood. Even if someone did it, I was out. Remember I met you on my way back from Johanna's house? Well, yes. Also, I found this in the room. She was holding a shiny little object. Is this an earring? I checked my ears in shock. One of my earrings was missing. I thought I was defeated. He was completely getting revenge for what happened the other day. This looks like yours, Alexis, and you're missing the left one. I took a deep breath. Getting emotional would play right into her hands. Indeed, it's mine, but that doesn't mean I did it. Right, making excuses now. It's unseemly when there's evidence. But still, the fact remains it was broken. Wait a minute. Then he went back to his room. He glanced at me as he left. I felt accused by him and just stood there frozen. Too bad, this is the end for you, doing such things. You set me up. There's no proof. If you had listened to me, this wouldn't have happened. I can explain. We'll see about that. And Scarlett's words became reality. No matter how much I explained to Ethan, he wouldn't really listen. Wait, I didn't do anything. I know. I get it, he said and quickly looked away. I heard laughter from behind. See, I told you so. What? No need for sour grapes? I threw myself into work after that. It was like trying to forget reality. 2 weeks passed with hardly any conversation between Ethan and me. During that time, Scarlett kept showing her triumphant face. Feeling down lately. Something wrong. I know you don't mean it. It's too late for that attitude now. She was unusually cheerful today. I had a feeling something bad would happen, and it soon did. While I was cleaning my room. What are you doing in this house? You're like a parasite. What are you talking about? Such a noisy woman. With that, she threw my belongings out of the window. What are you doing? I protested her insane behavior. Don't talk back to me. Pick them up, please. Then she suddenly held a knife to my throat. Realizing the danger, I couldn't move. Don't move. It's better for you. No normal person would go this far, even if they disliked me. She had clearly lost her mind. Leave now, or next time it won't be a joke. Understood. If you insist, I'll leave. I realized any further involvement with her could lead to something irreparable. Fine, you have a week. Leave within that time. Thank you. That was an opportunity. With a week's time, I could prepare various things, and she didn't understand. She didn't know who was really supporting this house. The reason she could live freely and comfortably was because of me. Get your preparations done quickly. I'll start right away, I told her, but I couldn't help laughing. I immediately switched back to a serious expression, not wanting her to notice. It will bring peace to the house. Very good. Yes, indeed. How foolish can she be? Without me, she'll face a hell far from peace. I began preparing for the move right away. The belongings were manageable, but finding a place to live was the first step. And when Scarlett was asleep, I decided to inform Ethan. So, you were told that. Actually, I have something to say too. I shouted in response to the serious topic he brought up. What do you mean? There's a lot to talk about. I'll tell you later. Make sure you do. 3 days after Scarlett's eviction order, I successfully found a new house, and soon the promised week arrived. Today is the day of the promise. You understand, right? Of course. The movers will be here soon. Finally. Oh, where's Ethan? I don't know. He's been out since the morning. Oh well, anyway, the thought of not having to see your face anymore is so refreshing. I'm going out too, so make sure everything's clean. Of course. I saw her off with a smile. Of course, it wasn't a smile from the heart. An hour later, the movers arrived and loaded all the belongings. I then contacted Ethan. Everything's loaded all right. Take care. See you later. I hung up the phone. I wondered what kind of face Scarlett would make when she returned. I couldn't wait to get to the new place when the move was finally completed. What did you do? Scarlett asked. I just moved as I was told. That can't be. Ethan's things are gone too, aren't they? She insisted. That's obvious because we moved together. You're lying, I countered. You want to talk with him. I put Ethan on speakerphone. She clearly hadn't fully grasped what was happening, just as I had planned. Mom, explain this to me, Ethan demanded. I found out that you were behind the model kit incident. Alexis would never do such a thing. How could you know that? Because she gave it to me as a gift, and she wouldn't do something like that, Ethan explained. He was right. I had gifted him that model kit. It was a limited edition, and I had lined up early in the morning to get it. So she was probing you, knowing everything, exactly to see how cruel you were to her. Ethan concluded. Oh my. By the way, from now on, you can manage on your own, right? We'll enjoy our time in a condominium, Ethan announced. What condominium? Weren't you just playing around? Scarlett clearly didn't understand anything. I thought she knew more, but not to this extent. Actually, I've been paying for our living expenses, Ethan revealed. How could that be? When I was at home, a little thought would make it clear, I said. Scarlett was speechless. No wonder, considering she was being supported by the person she harassed. The one who misunderstood everything was Scarlett herself. "So, Scarlett, please manage on your own. I'm not working, you know," Ethan stated. "Without you guys, you chose to let go," Scarlett protested. "It's not our problem. Let's both do our best from now on," Ethan said firmly. "Are you abandoning your mother?" Scarlett's desperation showed. "I'm not doing that. We used to live separately anyway." "Bye." Ethan hung up the phone. Both he and I felt refreshed. There was a time I thought we might get along, but I quickly forgot about that given how things turned out. It was her own doing. "By the way, why didn't you tell me about Scarlett?" I asked Ethan. "What about Scarlett?" "Oh, to deceive the enemy, first deceive your ally, right?" Ethan chuckled. We looked at each other and burst into laughter. This will surely bring peace. About a month later, Scarlett called me. "Hey, Alexis, I can't do this alone," she admitted. "It's only been a month. You've got a long way to go. Keep it up," I replied firmly. "It's not that. Let's both do our best." "Bye," Scarlett pleaded, seeking a glimmer of hope. But I wasn't going to easily reach out. Ethan had already blocked her calls, so she had no choice but to contact me. No matter how many times she called, I would keep pushing her away. "Shall we move this luggage?" I changed the topic. "Thanks. Could you take it there?" Ethan asked, and then he noticed. "Wait, is your right hand okay?" "Oh, yeah. Recently, it started to get stronger," I replied. I was constantly surprised by his recent changes, but I quickly felt happy. Scarlett didn't matter anymore. We were going to focus on our own happiness.